Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink is one of the inks that you voted for being some of the last reviews before I leave on my long trip. And this one was the landslide winner. It's by Diamine. Sorry about the glare. Majestic Blue. I think I mean, like one of his very early videos, Brian Goulet calling this sort of one of, you know, the brands that tried to sort of come up with a replacement for Parker's famous Penman Sapphire, in that it's sort of a medium, like sort of a dark medium blue, and that sheens incredibly a lot. Now, here, of course, is the 30 milliliter bottle, which is plastic. When they come in the glass bottles, they're 80 milliliters, and the bottles kind of look like this. I also have it in cartridge form, and I believe the boxes come with 18 cartridges, and I only have a couple left. Oh, they're just stuck on top of each other. Anyways, all the tests were done in this JinHao X450 with a fairly broad and fairly wet nib, because that is how I like my pens, and X450s so far for me have been just that, and so I love them. And also Hero 616 with a fine nib, but for some reason that day it was just an absolutely wet fine nib, and I didn't realize until later. If you see this feed in here, I'll try and show you. So there's this little tiny feed with the breather tube, and what had happened was that like the feed wasn't completely aligned. It was like partly twisted, and for some reason that was causing the flow that day to just be absolutely insanely wet. So yeah, let's compare it to some other blues, some very nice blues. Here's Diatramentus Indigo up at the top. Very nice medium blue. You can see it does have little hints of sort of green in it in some places. Here's Diamine's Majestic Blue. Hopefully I can get some of the sheen on camera for you, because it is all throughout there. Then below that, Noodler's Navy, which of course is a little green and a little light for a true navy, but I do love that ink. And Diatramentus Steel Blue, which is also very nice medium blue, but again has a little more green in it. And here's the Chromatography, which, you know, like many Diamine inks, is not terribly water resistant, but again, inks that, you know, can't stand up to water are often very easy to clean out of your pens. But also, as you might see here, up at the top, I hope I can get this on camera, but there's actually sheen here in the Chromatography, where all the ink is sort of bunched up together. But yeah, so it's a very saturated ink, by which I mean there's a lot of ink in the ink. You know, it's not watery, there's a lot of like particles in it. And here's the dried version, which you can see isn't much of a difference. But yeah. So, top down in density, Clairefontaine 90 grams per square meter. Great blue, right? I mean, it's just a lovely, lovely blue. And, oh, I think you see that sheen in the words? And the thing is, it's in the fine writing too. It's such a smaller line to try and get on camera. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Now, as I said, the fine was pretty wet, so that took 10 seconds to dry. 20 seconds for the broader, wetter JinHao. Yeah, it's a great shade of blue. It's just fantastic. But yeah, see, the flow generally is like a 5 out of 10. You know, it's not overly reticent. It's not an ink cannon, but it is very saturated, so it does tend to dry on the nib a bit, just because there's so much like stuff sitting on the nib. But yeah, also, as you might be able to see, there is a mess. There's not a lot that remains, but there is this big sort of ugly spot there. So yeah. Next up is Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter, where the fine took 7 seconds and the broader, wetter JinHao took 17. And again, hopefully I'll be able to get this on camera. There is some of that red sheen just everywhere. It's in the writing, but you know, usually it's so easy to get up here in the scrubby. So I tried to lay it on really thick, and because of that I kind of wore through the paper. So as I say down here, bleed, only where I am an idiot. Or where I am dumb, but yeah. Yeah, it's really well behaved. No bleed, no feather, no spread, despite it being a very dark ink, except for where I'm an idiot. Not much echo. Lovely shade of blue. Lots of this red metallic sheen. I'd say on average it does have a slightly longer dry time, but again, it's because there's so much stuff in that ink that it's almost like it blocks the air from evaporating quite as quickly, so yeah. Again, not a lot remains. I'd say that would not be very recoverable. It would be quite an effort, and it made quite a mess, so yeah. Next up is probably what so many of you have been waiting for. Tomoe River Paper, which is the paper that can make just about anything sheen, and so a really sheeny ink, oh yeah, there we go. Really sheeny ink like this, I mean, it almost takes on a purple color just because it's so sheeny. Now, this paper does tend to extend dry times, and this ink does tend to have slightly longer dry times, so I was kind of surprised when the fine only took 15 seconds and the broader one took 21. I was expecting 30 plus seconds on this one, maybe even 20 seconds on the fine. It's, yeah, you gotta have patience, but if you want that sheen, could definitely be, oh my god, look at that, yeah. But yeah, of course, like all Tomoe River, no bleed, no feather, no spread. There is some echo potential because this is extremely thin paper, and this is fairly dark ink, so yeah, Tomoe River loves to just let ink slide away, and here it certainly did. That's totally gone. Now, next up is Mead Notebook Paper, where I only use the fine nib. Oh, wait, no, this is out of order. Never mind. Sorry. 20-pound copier paper, where again I only use the fine nib except to write the name up here, but I feel like you can tell. So down here is where I use the fine, and then look at the line width change here. The spread was fantastic. I mean, it got so huge. And there's some feathering, and there's definitely bleed, and granted this was a very wet fine, but still, that's a lot of bleed for a fine nib. Granted, this is awful, awful paper. As you can probably see, there is no sheen left on here. This is totally gone. It's still a wonderful shade of blue. I don't know why my camera is making things so dark right now, but oh dear. Well, anyways, yeah, it's a great shade of blue. There's no shading. It's a disaster. Maybe an extra fine nib, or maybe a pen that wasn't sopping wet, or maybe on at least one step up from the world's worst paper. Food for thought. Next is Mead Notebook Paper, where here I only used the fine, as I said before. Took 3 seconds to dry, and although it did better, like here you can see there's only the barest few dots that make it all the way through. There is some echo. But again, it's right here along the edge where we have problems, which makes me think it's because of the pressing process, because this is very cheap paper, so production standards are a little low. But again, it's sort of, there's not as much shading, but there is still a bit, and there is a bit of like a tiny red halo of sheen around all the writing, but it's so tiny that I'm not going to get it on camera, but it is there. So, oh wait, actually, here where I wrote the name in the X450, you might be able to see some sheen, but yeah, there was also, oh no, it didn't really bleed too bad there either. Now, because this is more absorbent paper, as you can see, more remained, but it did feather and explode, kind of like what happened here with the 20-pound paper. It would be recoverable, but it would not be pretty. And lastly, I apologize, because this is that Moleskine paper that's super well behaved. So these are not accurate results. I cannot guarantee these results unless maybe you have some Moleskine paper that's been aged 10 to 12 years. But yeah, here, I mean, again, you can see this is that Moleskine where it's like really shiny on one side and then matte on the other. So I don't know. But here you still get sheen. Here you occasionally accidentally drop water on stuff. But yeah, it was really well behaved here. So, and I know for a fact in my more modern Moleskine notebook papers, when I use this ink, it's not this well behaved. But on Mead Notebook Paper, or even a step up from the world's worst copier paper, it does very well. On nicer papers, it's a dream. You just have to be patient because it does have slightly longer dry times. Other than that, God, it's fantastic. It's a wonderful shade of blue. You have sheen everywhere. The flow is, you don't have to fight with it the way you do with some really, really saturated inks. It's great. So yeah, for your consideration from the Triple N Network, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. Bye.